Oh, put my ocarina down here and welcome everybody in here with a little bit of help from Tatawari, sage people, Pomprios for Su Medicina. Want to give some thanks for my buddy over here, the David White, not the imposter, the poet. This is the real David White here, who's got some good mojo to share with us today. And thank you, everybody who's showing up here now and shows up later on. Blessings on your life, and thank you for the blessings of life. And put out the water over there, so we got some room to operate. And take a moment just to drop in here, open a Thanksgiving, dropping in and feeling into our manifestations of billions of years of evolution, bodies that our spirits are living in with awareness in and through our bodies. Gratitude to you, great mystery, great spirit. Gratitude to your creation of an earth-wide web and the medicine it brings to us that we'll learn more about today from David's sharing. And thank you for our ancestor spirits. We remember you here, make a home for you here, and gratitude for the Chumash ancestor spirits and people. Remember you here, and wherever you live, the ancestor spirits, honoring their lives. Thank you for our families, our communities, and thank you for bringing us together here tonight and through the technology of the internet. Being able to join our hearts, minds, and spirits together in a way to open the Nayarika, open the doorway to bring through some healing light and love and polishing up our stardust so we can show up a little more brighter and be the vehicles for healing light and love in the world for healing of the sacred hoop. So thank you, Creator. Thank you, David. Thank you for Ronan and Kimberly and Nicole in the background helping all this happen. Pomprios, hope. All right. Okay, so a couple of stories here before I introduce David and bring in what he has to share with us. So, medicine of the Earth wide web. Hold on, let me open this up so I can see the people here. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Oh, good to see you. And so over 50 years ago, I go out on my first vision quest. I'm up in the High Sierra, about 10,000 feet, and I'm surrounded by the beautiful granite mountains there and a thickly wooded forest by a beautiful lake. And I'm just starting to drop in for my time alone. I'm leaning against a tree, all kinds of pine trees and incredible shapes and forms. And I'm just looking at it. It's really thick with trees. I call them the tall, straight people. And I'm just paying attention, just noticing what comes into my awareness. And it starts to come into my awareness as I'm looking at these trees that, these guys are showing me a good way to live. They're actually showing me a good way to live. How are they doing that? Well, they've got roots in the ground. They're rooted. They're grounded. Always a good thing. And then they've got their bodies coming straight up, just going straight up from the earth. They're growing toward the sun, and then they reach out their branches. To me, it's like reaching out their arms, and it's like they're taking in the gift of life coming from above and joining it with the gift below. And so it just comes in mind that's a good way to live. That's just a really good way to live. That was my opening experience of these tall, straight people are teachers. They're teaching me how to live a good life. Many years later, I'm in Ireland, 1993, I think it was, for an international conference, and got there late at night and get up early in the morning and go out for a run in the woods out on the west side of Ireland, and going through the woods there and through the bogs and everything, and I come into an opening in a grove, and I see this big tree right in the center. There's no trees around it. It's all open around it. And I'm just stopped in my presence by the power of that tree, just stopping me and saying, you need Dad's permission. You're entering into a holy place here, a sacred place. And so I stopped. I gave thanks to all the trees around there and to what felt like the tree that was like the leader of the whole forest there. and asked permission to, if I could enter in the grove and come closer, and listen, and okay was given to come closer. And as I walked closer to the tree, I saw that it had an opening in it. It was hollow inside. It was like a sacred yoni shape. And I asked for permission to, if it was okay for me to go inside. It was large enough for me to go inside and just drop in and take in its energy and give thanks for it. And very powerful place. And I realized I was supposed to do a workshop the next day as part of this conference. And I realized this is the place I'm going to bring people to do this workshop, this place of power. So I gave my talk later that afternoon at the conference. It was an international transpersonal psychology conference. And after my talk, an Irishman came up to me and he said, "I know exactly where you were. That's a Brigid tree." And Brigid was one of the goddesses of ancient Ireland and the Celts. He said, that's a very holy, sacred place. And so he was happy that I found it and I was able to be there in a respectful way. So just sharing that briefly, a couple of experiences with the tall, straight people and how they've touched my life. And this morning when I was out doing my earthing practice, my bare feet on the wet grass, and there's pine trees around me and there's palm trees and other trees, and I just love to look at them. And I was doing my meditation there, and I was my awareness was just taken down into the Mother Earth and feeling like a field of consciousness of what was taking place, what is taking place underneath the earth, that we'll talk more about. The interconnectedness and the communication of what's taken below. It's an ancient consciousness and alive and vibrant. And at the same time, I'm taking in this energy from above, from Father, Son, and the two are joining inside my body. And I'm looking at the trees around me, and I'm feeling the energy field of their communication, their being. It was like two clouds of consciousness of energy in the earth and around me, and coming in from above. And with that was the awareness, beside appreciation of it all, was what's coming from Mother Earth and what's coming from the tree people has been going on for a long time here, long time. I'm the newcomer on the block. All the people here, whether they came 15, 20,000 newcomers on the block. What's taken place here in this ancient wisdom, this web of an earth web wisdom, it's happening right now, and it's aware of me, and I'm tuning into it and joyfully aware of it, and I just felt like bliss, just felt bliss being a part of it. So, and one last thing I wanted to share, it's not about the trees, but why I'm glad to be here, even more so than ever, and glad you're here, and people will be coming later to listen. A couple of days, 2 days ago, I had a scare. I don't get stomach aches. I got a good stomach. I don't get stomach aches. But I came home from where I was and started to have a pain in my stomach. And it got worse and worse. And I had to lie on the floor and trying to find a position where the pain would go away. And it moved from the center of my stomach to the right side where my appendix is. And I remember when I was a kid, I had a cousin who almost died from a burst appendix. And it felt like a fire there on the right side of my belly where the appendix is. And Kimberly was over helping me with a project, and I'm lying on the ground moaning and wreathing around. And she said, "I think we should go to the ER." And I said, "Well, just give me a little more time." And so in my process, I'm listening to what I'm experiencing, and I said, "Well, it could be appendix. It feels like fire. It feels like something could explode, and I could then have a burst appendix. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is, they go to the ER and they open you up and they find some kind of cancer like they did with my dad, and he had 7 days left to live when they opened him up. It was riddled with cancer. That's another possibility. So, okay, all of those are possibilities. Meanwhile, my body's experiencing this intense pain that's getting worse, and so I'm meditating with it, trying to work with it, that I'm not my body, I'm not the pain, but boy, my body's in a lot of pain. It's going through it. So what does it need? I don't know what's going on, but I know it needs love. So I'm just going to start breathing in love and sending it down there where the pain is, and see it as cooling water, cooling out the fire, the burning fire, and then breathing it out and letting it go. But meanwhile, the pain's still getting worse. So they said, "Okay, we better go to the emergency room." So get in the car and drive to the emergency room. And as we're driving, I'm noticing I'm feeling a little bit better, just a little, pain's backing off a little bit. So they pull up in front of the emergency room. I said, let me walk out down the block, well, up and down the block once and just see what happens. So I walk slowly, real slowly down the block, and I walk back, and it's all gone. Pain was all gone. Didn't have to go to the emergency room. So I'm very thankful for the wisdom inside of us that knows how to, whatever what was going on, the wisdom inside of all of us that knows how to heal, that knows how to transform energy states. And so just wanted to share that with my gratitude for being here, because I could have been recovering from surgery or worse, or who knows what. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're here. Glad everybody's here. Oh, all right. So some of you may know Susan Simard, who wrote a book called Finding the Mother Tree. And she's talking here in Santa Barbara tonight. David and I were together a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned I wanted to go see her. He said he had an extra ticket. And so he's gifting me with going to see Susan Simard. And I said, well, I have the Live Love Now group before we go, so come on over early, and then I can interview about your work, because his work is very connected with the Earth Wide Web. But Suzanne's work is the world's foremost forest ecologist and the author of Finding the Mother Tree, How Trees Interact and Communicate Using Below Ground Fungal Networks, Reshaping the Way We Understand the Life and Growth of Plants, which of course impacts us. So that's all about the Earth Wide Web. So my brother David over here, Dr. David Smith, is from Scotland. David White. David White.
The real David White.
Yes. I'm glad we cleared that up. He's not the imposter, that guy who writes those phony poems and stuff. This is the real David White from Scotland. So David does, for many, many, many years, not only is he hugely knowledgeable about the science of what's going on in the fungal and the trees, but he's been working for many, many years in many innovative, creative programs, including really experiential learning for kids with nature. So I'm going to ask David to share some of what he's been involved with, and then we'll take off from there. Oh.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tomas. Nice to be here on the World Wide Web. And it is a nice evening we're going to have to see Suzanne Simard talk about her work. And it's been very interesting for me to follow that, because it's about 30 years ago that people really believed that any interaction between fungi and plants was pathogenic, that there wasn't really an understanding of any reciprocal or synergistic relationship between plants and fungi until the mid-90s. And now we have a very clear idea that actually fungi are in many ways essential for plant growth. And Suzanne, what she's found is evidence for the trees using fungi as a communication network. And indeed, she posits that trees actually have support their kin and can transfer nutrients via the fungal network to their kin, to the younger trees from the mother tree, and hence the mother tree. So that for me is very interesting, because one of the things that I do through my business is that I make and brew compost teas, and those I primarily make for arborists and landscapers. And we include in those, for the arborists, we include mycorrhizae, which are fungal roots. We include the mycorrhizae, the spores of fungi that are the mycorrhizal allies of the trees that we're treating. So in a way, I'm using that synergistic relationship to enhance trees that are struggling. And what happens with that protocol is that I make compost teas, which is a liquid form of compost, and it's all about the quality of compost. But I pass that on to arborists who have a tank and a pump and a probe, and they inject it around the root system of trees that are ailing, and we put into that tea the mycorrhizae, the spores of the fungi that is particularly the ally of the predominant tree we treat around here. In Southern California, in this area, 80% of the living things around about us are plants, and of the plants that are here, 80% of them are coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia, and they have an interesting mycorrhizal ally, which is affectionately known as dead man's foot, because it's a puffball that looks pretty ugly, but it is composed entirely of spores that are tiny. When I grind it and add it to these compost teas, the spores are 7 microns across, so they're absolutely tiny, and it looks like smoke. And in fact, it's been said that fungal spores have the ability to travel through interstellar space, which makes for an interesting idea of how life evolved on Earth. And it's important to realize, that plants have evolved. What our understanding about plant evolution is that they evolved maybe 300 million years ago, but that fungi were present 400 million years ago. So that 100 million years of a fungally dominated planet. And there is evidence in the fossil record of huge fungi growing to the size of trees, which is pretty amazing to imagine. And of course, some of the first fungal interactions are lichens. And the story that we tell students is that Freddie Fungi and Annie Algae had a lichen for each other, and they got together. And literally, they fungi can dissolve stones, so they can get the minerals that plants need, and plants can feed the fungi the carbohydrates that they make by taking CO2 out of the atmosphere and adding it to water and pumping it into the ground. And that's why one of the reasons that I'm really attracted to plants, in that they are nature-based climate solutions. And so when we're in our climate crisis, I can point to the use of plants, the planting of plants, as being a hopeful means of addressing climate change. And particularly, I focus on doing that with the next generation, with youngsters. So we have, so I have a business. Thank you. I have a business, but I also do a lot of nonprofit stuff. And the nonprofit stuff I run, it's called Once Upon a Watershed, and I work with public schools, and it's primarily in Ventura County, but I have done this throughout kind of Southern California, and we spread it out through the internet to, who knows, who's influenced by the work that we're doing. But, the greening schools movement is really something that I'm very much behind. We need to connect the next generation to nature. How are they going to protect nature if they don't know what it is? So a lot of what we're doing is at schools introducing tree planting, hardscape removal, rainwater gardens at schools. And so that's a little bit about the work that I do, connecting kids to nature. And I could talk more about the background of that if you want to know more about how that came about.
Well, how did you get involved with working in the field that you're in? What happened in your life that brought you into that?
My training, I'm actually trained as a cell biologist. I have a PhD in medicine, which is a fairly unusual thing. But and I was working with the reason I have that was I was working with the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology in Edinburgh University. So I was doing a lot of microscopy and did a lot of microscope work, and so I have that ability to understand scientific methodology. But the first place I visited in America was Ojai, which is the town that I live in now, and I really liked Ojai when I first visited it, and so I chose place to be. And it's interesting with Ojai, if you've been there, it's an emergent center for education. And so the proof of that is that there's maybe 5 or 6 independent schools there, as well as being a pretty vibrant public school system. And so one of the things that was key for me was that I got to take a permaculture design course with Bill Mollison. And that brought together the things that I was involved in. I was interested in, I like eating, I like food production. I was interested in organics. We were involved in recycling. I also was involved in protecting our wild river. We got our local wild river protected as a wild scenic river in 1996. And I didn't realize that all of those things were connected. And that was brought to me by doing the permaculture design course. And I really appreciate that. And one of the things that I that really resonates with me and I think is important is that in ecology, one of the things that we say in ecology as a scientist is that everything's connected. And if you affect something, then it's going to have a knock-on effect on everything else. And that's also, I think, a core tenet of indigenous knowledge, that everything is connected. And I really appreciate the connection between science and indigenous knowledge that presents. So that everything being connected. For instance, right now we're doing our estuary education program. We take fifth graders out, they visit the estuary, which is a key point in our watershed, but we're teaching about plastics and plastic pollution. And right now that's really appropriate because the UN Treaty on Plastics just was meeting in Ottawa. We had our friends Marcus Erickson and Anna Cummins from Five Gyres were up there. Actually, Marcus was there. And really trying to make agreements that would be binding on countries and corporations to stop them producing so much plastic. It's interesting, it's not just the plastic pollution, it's the energy use of plastic production is huge. And when we look at the predictions for the carbon use of making plastics, it's going to become a major part of our emissions. It is a major part. It's going to become the major part of our emissions as we progress into the latter part of this century. So it's just interesting to, like, one of the things I'll bring up with students is that we'll do trash pickup. I'll talk about the plastics and particularly highlighting single-use plastics. But I say to them, it's not your fault that this pollution is here. It's not your fault, because it's the companies who love to make single-use plastics because you always have to buy another one, and it brings them more profit, and money doesn't have a conscience. So it's interesting to bring these things up to students. I'm surprised, and I'm talking here about 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, and I'll ask them, what's plastic made of? And it's very few students that know that plastic is made of oil. So there's a lot of education that I do that I think is, that might be a key thing, that they are like, oh, this is oil. So, and what a legacy we're leaving the next generation, my goodness. So that's, it seems like the core to what I do is connecting kids to nature, and I appreciate it. I appreciate connecting to nature. Where I live has a lot of green space. Let's hear it for land trusts that protect land and allow the public to have access to it. We have some interesting land trusts, particularly a shout out here to White Buffalo Land Trust that is both protecting land and doing regenerative agriculture on it. I ran a nonprofit center for regenerative agriculture for 20 years. And in case you were interested, a definition of regenerative is increasing soil carbon content. That's a very simple definition of regenerative agriculture. Increasing soil carbon content increases the health of the soil, and it is drawing down carbon from the atmosphere. That's why regenerative agriculture can be viewed as a nature-based climate solution. And the two films that we had recently that really promoted that was The Biggest Little Farm and Kiss the Ground. And Kiss the Ground actually has a new movie out right now called Common Ground. And again, those are highlighting techniques of regenerative agriculture and how those can affect nature-based climate solutions. So I tapped into that through permaculture design, understanding that soils were key. And then I was a student of Dr. Elaine Ingham, who's affectionately known as the Queen of the Soil. And she introduced me to the importance of the soil food web. And this is not, it's not widely known that soils are actually full of biology. And the way that plants and soil interact is that plants feed the soil. They have exudates that come out of their roots that are carbohydrates. They're having sugars come out of their roots, and around about those roots in this exquisite area called the rhizosphere, that's where the biology, the bacteria, the protozoa, the nematodes, the fungi collaborate and get the nutrients from the plants. And then those biological entities are reproducing and defecating and dying and releasing nutrients in exactly the area the plant needs them. And then the plant is trading with fungi for minerals that it can't get immediately, but fungi can. So there's a lot to be learned. And I think that, the fungal, again, like we talk about having to remember, right? And we brought this up about we need to remember. I mean, locally here, the Chumash were here for 13,000 years. And we talk about going back 7 generations, and that might be 300 years. But 13,000 years, what an immense amount of knowledge they had of plants and their uses that we've lost. So I'm fortunate to have a friend, Lanny Coffer, who just published a book, Medicinal Herbs of Southern California. And I enjoy spending time with him and learning about that. But we're learning more about the role of fungi. And for instance, I was visiting a friend who is recovered from breast cancer, and we were looking at some fungi growing in her yard, and there was Trametes versicolor, which is known as turkey tail, and it's a general adjuvant for your immune system. And people who are going through chemotherapy in Japan, it's approved for treatment. And we're just learning what we don't know, if you like. We know we don't know about it. And it's an interesting way to look at the cosmos. There are certain things we've spent thousands of years learning about and we know about. And then there's maybe things that we're now knowing we don't know about, like the functions of fungi or the plants that are being extirpated in tropical forests. But then beyond that, there's a whole bunch of things that we don't even know we don't know. And it's interesting to consider, for instance, biodynamics. If you've heard of biodynamic agriculture, it involves what I would call kind of occult practices, meaning they're hidden. They take manures and put it into a horn at midnight and bury it. And I'm like, how the heck does that affect anything? But when you go to biodynamic farms, they look great. So maybe, who knows? The mystery of nature, it's so complex. It's beyond our understanding. And we should be humbled. Humus and human and humble have the same kind of root, I think. So is that enough?
That's great. And speaking of it, to me, you're speaking about intelligence, the intelligence of it is. So I want to read something. Bear with me. I want to read a few pages from Robin Kimmerer. Some of you have read her books, Braiding Sweet. Yeah, so this is very interesting. Check this out. She says, traditional cultures, and then we'll come back to David, who sit beneath the white pines recognize that human people are only one manifestation of intelligence in the living world. Other beings who are understood as persons possessed of their own gifts, responsibilities, and intentions. This is not some kind of mistaken anthropomorphism. Trees are not misconstrued as leaf-wearing humans, but respected as unique sovereign beings, equal to or exceeding the power of humans. Seneca scholar John Mohawk wrote that according to his culture, this is so interesting, an individual is not smart, but merely lucky to be part of a system that has intelligence. Be humble about that. Sometimes people say to me, God knows why, they say, they thank me for my wisdom. They say, I've got some wisdom. And I always say, I don't have any wisdom. Wisdom exists, and it's available to any of us if we open up to it. So it's not something somebody owns. So Kimmerer goes on and says, the real intelligence isn't the property of an individual. The real intelligence is the property of the universe itself. That's so beautiful.
How sad.
Hold on here, I gotta get this thing down. The indigenous story tradition speaks of a past in which all beings spoke the same language and life lessons flowed among species. But we've forgotten or been made to forget by modern culture how to listen. So all we hear is sound emptied of its meaning. The soft semblance of pine needles in the wind is an acoustic signature of pines. But this well-known whispering of the pines is just a sound. It's not their voice. Plants tell their stories not by what they say, by what they do. They tell their story in their bodies, in an alphabet once as familiar as the song of every bird, which we have also forgotten, as we become affected not only with plant blindness, but plant deafness. The study of intelligence other than our own is one of continual expansion. I'm not aware of a single research study that demonstrates that other beings are dumber than we think. Octopi solve puzzles. Chickadees create language, crows make tools, rats feel anxiety, elephants mourn, parrots do calculus, apes read symbols, nematodes navigate, and honeybees dance the results of cost to benefit analysis of sucrose rewards like an economic ballet. Even the slime mold can learn a maze, enduring toxic obstacles to obtain the richest rewards. The blinders are coming off, and the definitions of intelligence expands every time we ask that question. So we in the West were being humbled from our ego arrogance, thinking we're the greatest things in sliced bread, and other beings are lesser than us. Kimmerer goes on. Where is intelligence situated? Our conceptions of intelligence are based on animal models and a kind of brain chauvinism. Every animal, from the flatworm to the black bear, has a brain, a central meeting place of sensation and coordinated response. Because animals are mobile, autonomous beings who must pursue their food, their brain must be compact and portable. But a centralized brain is not needed for plant intelligence. Rapid movement is not necessary when the food comes to you. For an autotrophic, sensal being, bathed in the needed resources, networked in intimate relationships with others above and below ground, a very different system of sensation and response might well evolve, which looks like nothing like the human model. If food becomes abundant, no animal can grow more legs to chase after it, or a new mouth to eat more. In times of shortage, most cannot cast off a limb that has no energy to sustain. The whole organism is static in form and flourishes or suffers within those constraints, but not so for plants, who can adaptively alter their circumstances by growing additional parts or losing unneeded ones. Decision-making at a tree pace looks like passivity to us herky-jerky animals accustomed to our short lifespans. But pine behavior is a slow motion pursuit of adaptive solutions. Plant intelligence, or what's called adaptively flexible behavior, may manifest in an extraordinary capacity to change form in real time by altering their allocation of carbon to different functions in response to changing needs. We're talking about inanimate intelligence. The slow dance of parts emerging and disappearing is a tree-paced equivalent of movement. Branches expand into light-filled gaps and retreat from dense shade. They adjust their architecture to optimize light capture. Roots are deployed in new directions to following gradients of water and minerals, not randomly, but with purpose. So this speaks to the intelligence of the plant people, of the tall, straight people. I want to come back to Brother David here, who feels or tell me if I'm wrong about this, because that you feel a particular affinity with the oak tree people.
Yes.
So we speak about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they are the predominant plant in our neighborhood, and they are the climax community when our communities develop. It's the peak of it, if you like, is California Coast live oak woodland, and I have in my education program, we have our story of our oaks, which were a staple food for the Chumash, and we make acorn necklaces and we plant acorns. But I also, during COVID, one of the silver linings was I got to attend this conference on basically on tree planting that was held by the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. And I would have never gone to that normally, but because it was during COVID, I got to do it remotely. And one of the things that from the Morton Arboretum in Chicago presented, and they mentioned they were joining together areas of oaks that they had in the Chicago area, and they mentioned they had an initiative called Oaktober, and I loved that. And I thought, oh, Oaktober, I'm going to bring that to Ventura County, and I did. And I got the Ventura County to proclaim Oaktober as Oak Awareness Month. And that's actually spread out, and there's more groups that are embracing Oak Awareness Month. And there's a bunch of different things that you can do just to go and visit oak trees and spend some time in them, to lie down and look up at their canopy, to put your hands in the soil around trees and understand that trees make soil with dropping leaves, and that's why you should leave them. They're called leaves because you should leave them, because that's making soil. Right? So yeah, the oak tree is one of the books I'd point you towards, and this is a delightful book. Melina Watts wrote a book called Tree, and it's magical realism, a book written as if by a coast live oak. And it's really a fantastic book that I highly recommend. And she talks interestingly about the tree communication, but they communicate with the rock people too. And so when I go back to Scotland, where I'm from, my dad wrote a couple of books about the stone circles of Scotland. And most people know about Stonehenge. Well, in the northeast of Scotland, there's about 70 recumbent stone circles. My dad wrote a couple of books about them. And so I've toured those all my life. And what I notice is that the stones endure. And so being able to hear or witness trees is one thing, and we have an appreciation for their intelligence. But the intelligence of the rock people it's so different. Like, we encounter it with students picking up rocks on the beach that are sandstone, and the life of that rock, which has been compressed and then elevated and then eroded and brought down and shaped, it's very hard for us to entrain to the timeline of the rock people, but they are the shape of our earth, So Melina Watts and Tree has some interesting conversations between the trees and the tree people in the rock, and particularly this one tree that's a feature of the book. So highly recommend that one. My friend John Liu was on a conference, and they had at the end of the conference, he's an ecosystem restoration camps, John Liu, and he covered the reforestation of the Loess Plateau in China, which turned him from being a cinematographer into an ecosystem restoration expert. And he mentioned in the kind of throwaway gathering at the very end, the question was, what's the book on your bedside table? And he said, I'm reading this book called Tree. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. So, and I got Melina to come and participate in some of our Oaktober events, where she would do readings, and then we'd visit oaks in an area where there's oak restoration. And it's pretty delightful to be able to sit with trees and just have even a short amount of time to just intentionally sit with the tree. And so I recommend that book, and I recommend visiting your favorite tree and spending time with your back against it or lying underneath it and soaking up the intelligence of the tree people.
So that leads me to a question. What has come from your experience of doing that, your vast experience? What voices have you heard? What messages, what medicine teachings have you got from being with the Tall Strait people, and with your experiences of being with the underground network mycelium of the mushroom people? What medicine teachings have come through so far for you?
I think it's about the next generations. And when we do the sweet medicine ceremony, and we think about the children and the grandchildren, and then I think about 7 generations, or I think about thousands of years in future, and I think about nature, I want to make sure that the opportunity to connect with nature is available to future generations. And so it's hard to describe what is in that message, but it's pretty clear to me that we need to have that connection be fostered and available in the future.
Amen. May it be so. What's let me just listen for a moment. What do you think is, from your experience of listening, is some of the most important teachings coming from the Tall Strait people and from the fungal network below?
Yeah, well, collaboration is a key one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that again it comes back to observing natural patterns and being aware of of natural cycles. And so, for instance, the role of soil biology as decomposers, and understanding that life has been successful on this earth because it's cyclical. And when we look at our industrial civilization, where it's extractive and then, throw it away, that just isn't going to work for very long. I mean, and in biological terms, it's a heartbeat or a blink of the eye since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, it's 7 generations, maybe 300 years. But that's just when you think about the relationship between acorn woodpeckers and oak trees. How long did that take to evolve? Yeah. When we show dragonfly larvae and people realize, oh, they've been around 350 million years. I mean, this is a long time these things have been around. So it's an appreciation for nature is so important. Just being able to witness it. When they talk about, I love these terms I'll introduce you to. When they talk about designing for the healing effects of nature, what you want to do is maximize the sparkle effect. And the sparkle effect, which sounds like a great band name, like, oh yeah, the sparkle effect, they're playing. When you look at a tree and the light is coming off all its leaves, then you see the sparkle effect. When you look at waves or look out at the ocean, you get the sparkle effect. When you look at a river, a freshet going over rocks, you see the sparkle effect. And what that engenders is soft fascination. And soft fascination is the exact opposite of hard focus. Hard focus we see all around us right now, and it looks like this. There's an electronic device in the hand, and that's hard focus. And the antidote to that is soft fascination, which is just looking at nature and not seeing any specific thing, but just being aware of the awesomeness of it all. And when we'll go tonight to UCSB, if we get a chance to go and look at the sunset, soft fascination will abound.
I call it soft eyes.
Soft eyes, yeah.
Soft eyes.
Yeah.
So the intelligence of the plant people, the intelligence of the tall, straight people, speaks of how it works through cycles and it works through cooperation.
Yep.
Not competing against each other, but everybody working together.
And I think that this is what Suzanne's going to show us tonight, is that there's much more to learn about cooperation. For instance, one of the things that I think she found, or was certainly reported, was that they found in the Pacific Northwest that they'd find the DNA of salmon in the trees, because the bear would eat the salmon, leave the carcass, and the tree would absorb it through its roots. And so they could actually find markers for salmon in trees. And some of that might be mediated by fungi. So that's an interesting collaboration and cyclical thing, because the trees are also creating the habitat for the salmon, So it's the complexity of nature has to be honored, I guess.
Which is the intelligence of it. Working cooperative.
Yes. And it's beyond our understanding. So it's important that we revere it and protect it.
Amen. I want to just see if anybody has any questions you'd like to ask David here, taking advantage of his knowledge and experience. Anybody having a question you want to ask about?
Oh yeah.
Sister Deborah, you gotta unmute yourself. Coming to us from the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you. This was so just joyful and hopeful and wonderful to hear. And I love what you're doing with the kids, because it's all about the kids and looking forward and changing making huge shifts in attitudes. And I'm just wondering if I could join your school and become a student. I want to come there and just listen to you all day.
Well, thank you, Deborah. That's an honor.
Anyway, thank you for what you're doing. I really, really appreciate it. And it's just making me smile so much. Thank you.
Well,
Raise your hand.
interestingly, one of my teachers, Jeff Lawton, who now has kind of taken over the reins of the Permaculture Institute in Australia, he realized that by teaching in person that he could only reach a very small amount of people, and so he put a lot of effort into putting his teachings into video and distributing them through the YouTube University, as I refer to it. And so we did put some effort through Center for Regenerative Agriculture to put some soil food web information up there. And now I was shy about it, but I do put stuff on Instagram, and I have an Instagram post, which is The Soil Doctor.
Oh, good.
And we also have our nonprofit education program is Once Upon a Watershed, and that's on Instagram too. So
No, I think that's super important. You know, I taught in middle school for 40 some years, and I know that that's how kids really relate. You know, like I forget the guy's name, somebody, the science guy, but
all
you
right,
know,
Bill Nye.
yeah, Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, it's really, really important. But you know, sometimes even if it's only that one student that you reach, you never know the ripple effects that will have. So just
absolutely.
because, you know, you can make an impression in person on some kids that you could never make on a video. So there's nothing like, you know, real people and, you know, hands-on. So
Speaking of making impressions with kids, at a retreat one morning, David led us in a song that he did with kids. I don't remember the song, but we had a
Oh,
great
the
time.
penguin,
How does it
song?
go? How does it go? Sing it
or
for
was
us.
it no, it was the Watershed Boogie.
Yes, yes.
Oh, it was Watershed Boogie.
Yeah.
That's
yay.
the Watershed Boogie is, I did it this morning. It's precipitation, accumulation, evaporation, condensation. And the water cycle boogie goes round and round. The water cycle boogie goes up and down.
I love it. I love it. Yep.
Yeah.
Why don't you jump
You're
in?
perfect with what you're doing there. That's awesome. I just love it. Thank you.
Just stand.
I'd like to ask a question about, I've been experimenting with ozonation, ozonated water for myself, but I read the book that you guys are going
I
to,
don't know if
and
you,
it was very interesting that all these communications underground touch, and they do have it, but ozone has a way of communicating. I don't know whether you've done experimentation with it, but you might want to check that out.
Yeah, I know that ozone is used by some people for increasing the dissolved oxygen content of soils. So
Yeah.
oxygen is something that animals need. So I imagine that ozonation is affecting more oxygen for soil biology.
Yeah, I'm using it for my, I have prostate cancer, and I've been using it, and it's amazing what happens.
All right. Well, there's a lot of people that I know in Ojai are using ozone treatment. Some of it is dental work, but I
Yes.
know people that are using it for treatment of cancers too. So there certainly is a lot of information out there about using ozone as an ameliorative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ralph,
thank-
are you going out and doing earthing barefoot, 30 minutes on the earth?
Oh yeah, I do that.
Okay, great. Good.
Nice.
Good. Well, healing prayers for you, my brother. Healing prayers.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been 4 years, so I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah, and you're looking good, dude.
Yeah, I feel good.
All right. Praise be. All right. Anybody else before we do like
I
a
see
closing
Deborah
meditation?
was
Deborah?
mentioning the book, the overstory and understory, right? And
Oh.
that I think is kind of a fictional representation of Suzanne Simard, amongst other things, right? And so she's kind of featured in that book, but is not named as Suzanne Simard. I did read that book though, and there was
Awesome book.
yeah, there was a lot in that. So I'm really curious. to see what Suzanne says tonight, especially with the question that you gave about what are the fungi and what is it, the fungal people and the two-legged, no, the tall
straight
people need from the two-legged.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if she answers that question.
Yeah.
That's going to be fascinating. It's a full house tonight at UCSB.
Yeah, Kimberly tried to get tickets. It was all sold out.
Yeah.
She couldn't get in.
I bought my tickets in January.
So David sent me a flyer or an email coming from the people sponsoring it, Suzanne's presentation today. Says if you have any questions, to email the questions in. So the question that I listened inside and said, well, what's the question that comes up? And the question was what do the plant people and the plant spirits want from us? You know, we're our culture. We're extractors. We take, but what do they want from us? So I know one thing they want from us. So I'd like to close with a meditation about that. But any closing words, David, you'd like to share before we?
You know, I think that in terms of trying to affect the next generation, it's important to look to your local public school and what is going on in your local public school, especially at the elementary or kindergarten or TK or pre-K level, to connect kids to nature. And you know, is there composting going on there? Is there a school garden? One of my favorite things to do is to sieve compost with children, where they collect the bugs out of the sieve, and you don't need to teach them that soil's alive. They know it's alive because it's full of animals and they're collecting it, and they're also getting inoculated with beneficial bacteria while they do it. And I just wish that I could encourage them to take their shoes off, but there are certain safety issues that come up around schools. And encouraging planting edible things at schools that kids can eat. One of my great successes here has been to plant Persian mulberries at school, which fruit in May. And it took about 5, 6, 7 years for them really to be productive, but it's just fantastic. Actually, I ate my first one last night off the mulberry tree at my local school.
And you're still alive. So
It was really
sign.
yummy.
All right, we got a few minutes left here, so let's just take a few moments to drop inside, bring our awareness down inside here with our eyes closed, and just open to the fact. I'm presenting this as a fact that right now we're sitting in buildings that have floors, and underneath the floors, underneath the foundations, what is there? Mother Earth. And what's in Mother Earth is the network, is the world, is the nature Earth web, the nature web, World Wide Web is beneath us, and it's communicating right now. It's vibrating its messages, and we all, wherever we live, in a building or in a city, there's tree people around somewhere. The tree people are communicating. So that's an energy field that below us and above Mother Earth's body, it's communicating. Both of them are communicating and working right now in their symbiotic and their cooperative way, furthering life, helping life to grow and keep going in a healthy way when we don't impede it. So just opening, taking a moment or two to just open. There's an invisible energy that's coming into us from below, from Mother Earth, from the Earth Wide Web. There's an invisible energy that's coming into us that we're enmeshed in the field of, the tall, straight people communicating with each other in the ways they've been doing for millions and millions and millions of years, like David was saying. So just opening to receiving, opening our sensate abilities, whatever way we might experience it, to those energies coming into us, about cooperation, about the wisdom of cycles, about working cooperatively, synergistically together to produce and bring through amazing miracles of life that couldn't be done by separate entities all working together. And so we're enmeshed in those fields right now, working. They're working 24/7. What do we have to, what might we give to them in support of the work they're doing? Because if they weren't doing that work, we wouldn't be here. We would not be here. They don't need us for them to live. We need them, what they give to us, and they're giving right now. So what do we have to give to them? What might we give to them that's meaningful? certainly actions to protect their lives, such as the many programs David's talked about. But right here, right now, because we are connected with them, we're not separate from those tall, straight people. We're not connected from the underground web of communicating intelligence. Let's just take a few moments breathing down into our hearts with gratitude for our lives and gratitude for the creative wisdom power of the universe that creates such a marvelous universe of cycles and rhythms and beings working together to manifest the beauty that we have here on this planet that we call Earth. Turtle Island, Pachamama. And from our open hearts, 2 words, and the energy of what the 2 words say. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, tall, straight people, for your lives, for your beauty, for your intelligence, for all the work you do promoting life. And thank you, the microbial web beneath our feet in Mother Earth. Thank you. All the beings in the way David so wonderfully described, working their miraculous, interwoven communications, cooperating, helping each other. Thank you. Thank you for your lives. Prayers for your people, protection for your people, your families. Help us to remember you with gratitude, always working 24/7 to nurture life, the continuation of healthy life. And so we send to you our gratitude for your lives, for the work that you do, and our prayers for your healing and restoration of health and wellness. And that more of us 2-leggeds wake up to the interconnectedness that we all share in this great web of life, of cosmic life. The gift of an incarnation, the gift of a human incarnation on this beautiful jewel of a planet in the midst of the infinite cosmos, and the miraculous manifestations of life. Great grandmother growth, Tukutse Nakwe, we give thanks to you for birthing all of these wondrous beings. In Turtle Island, Pachamama, Mother Earth, Mother Oceans, Mother Air, prayers for your healing, prayers for restoration of joyful waters and air and earth and trees and fungi. Joyful because the 2-leggeds have reached a critical mass of waking up to recognizing how we're all relatives, we're all related, and we join them in following their wisdom, paying attention to cycles and how to work cooperatively to open the doorway to fullest blossoming, greatest good of life on this beautiful Mother Earth that we're gifted to be a part of. And help us to listen. David has shared what's come from him, his guidance, listening about programs and activities he can do to help this process. And each of us, when we open and listen to the guidance that's come to us from the tall, straight people, being in the tree, it might be in the dreaming, just listening, the guidance that come to us from Mother Earth about what we can do in our lives to help be part of that movement to restore the recognition and the living from the understanding of how we're all related in this beautiful cosmic blossoming of life. For the healing of the sacred hoop, may it be so. Oh, Matakuyasin. On opening our eyes and taking a look here, I want to thank my brother David for you and your sharing and gifts, and everybody. Take good care of yourself. And until next time, bye con Dios. Oh.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Thank
Con
you.
Dios, Tomas.
Hey, besos.